the minister here at DuPage Unitarian Universalist Church. So today we're going to consider the transitions that are going on within Unitarian Universalism, our Unitarian Universalist Association, the UUA, and also what kind of transitions we're going through as Unitarian Universalists. We are, for those who are new, we are UUs. So if you hear UU, it means you. So one of the transitions that I want to share with you before I get any further is this year at our General Assembly we voted for a new president, and then we now have the first woman as a Unitarian Universalist president of our denomination, Susan Frederick Gray. So now as we turn to look at our faith and our denomination, who we are as Unitarian Universalists, and the transitions that we're going through, I'd like to read our 7 principles as a grounding for us to reflect on this. These are our 7 principles. You can read them there, and I'm going to read them as well. We affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. A free and responsible search for truth and meaning. The right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. The goal of a world community of peace, liberty, and justice for all, and respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. Okay.
I invite you to rise in body or spirit and join me in saying our mission statement, which is printed in your order of service and projected to my right. We gather as an inclusive community to grow in character, mind, and spirit, and to transform the world toward fairness, love, and compassion. Please be seated. Just a minute. Okay. In the UU world, it was printed, the song "Standing on the Side of Love" quickly became a UU anthem sung at state capitals across the country in the fight for marriage equality. It became a rallying cry when Unitarian Universalists were thrown into jails in 2010 in Phoenix alongside immigrants demonstrating for their rights. And during the Unitarian Universalist Association Justice General Assembly, also in Phoenix in 2012. The UUA's public advocacy campaign is named for it, making "Standing on the Side of Love" the slogan our faith is known for, emblazoned on yellow t-shirts that pop out of the crowd at all kinds of demonstrations. Okay. But many disabled people felt the words did not speak for them. Jason Sheldon wrote this hymn, number 1014 in the Teal hymnal, "Standing on the Side of Love." At General Assembly, our Unitarian Universalist denominational meeting in June of this year, he announced that he had changed the words to embrace all people, including those who are differently abled, and we all sang the new words. He said about the new words, "Many of you have asked, and I thought it best to go ahead and say that I have officially changed the title and lyric of Standing on the Side of Love to Answering the Call of Love. What I love most about this change, which I really do love, and I am quite convinced the new metaphor is more theologically useful and accurate, is what happens after singing the new words in the first chorus. We sing verse 2, Sometimes we build a barrier to keep love tightly bound. It has yet to fail to make me cry. Let us sing, answering the call of love. Please rise. The words will be projected to my right.
Regarding financial support of the African Americans in our faith and the many issues that they were facing at the time. This was particularly hurtful to those African American Unitarian Universalists because more Unitarian Universalist ministers walked with Martin Luther King Jr. in Selma than from any other religious denomination. And one of our ministers lost his life there. And Martin Luther King Jr. had spoken at General Assembly in 1966. And he had been assassinated the year before the vote, that 1969 General Assembly vote. How many people in this room are aware of the schism between African Americans and Unitarian Universalism. Yeah. It's important to learn more about it. I had someone come up to me earlier, and there's some books on it. I'd love to share them with you. This is a critically important piece of our institutional history that we as a white majority congregation must acknowledge if we are, as Unitarian Universalists, are to flourish and grow and affirm the worth and dignity of every person. Dr. Sanyika is still hesitant about returning to Unitarian Universalism, but finds hope in a new organization, Black Lives Unitarian Universalists, or BLUE as they're called, with many young African American Unitarian Universalists in its ranks. He attributes institutional racism and white supremacy within Unitarian Universalism for the walkout almost 50 years ago, and he still feels there is white supremacy at work within our denomination. Here are some excerpts from his speech.
Unitarian Universalism at its finest and at its best is an instrument to transform humanity so that it can evolve to its highest level of consciousness and potential. At its best, and it must constantly be vigilant to denounce all forms of human oppression, exploitation, degradation, domination, and control in any form that it comes. UUism at its best is a transformative agent for justice and liberation and peace in the world. At its best. But it can't do that if it marginalizes humanity. If it leaves anybody out at the table, you cannot fulfill that mission. You cannot fulfill that mission by being partial to some and not fair with all. UUism is still under construction. And that is that being under construction means you are constantly aware. It means that you are constantly responsive to the demands around you, that you do not think you have reached that perfect state where there's something called Unitarian Universalist exceptionalism, because there is no UU exceptionalism. You are still under construction, and there's nothing wrong with still being constructed. As we say in my tradition, the Most High is not finished with you yet. When we left in 1969, that was not a walkout. It was an exodus. It was an exodus because we no longer felt we had a home. We no longer felt the love and care. We no longer felt that black humanism was on the agenda to be discussed. You see, because we've always said human agency is at the center of transformation, but you can't do it without divine reconciliation. We say we can be theists and non-theists. I know some of you want to argue that point, but we can talk about that. I don't mind talking about it because we were no longer talking about kindergarten theology with some spookistic white guy sitting up in no sky. That's not what we were talking about. We were criticizing the church across the board, not just UUism, but we invite that conversation in the modern era so that we can all modernize our understanding that there can be no humanism without discussing black humanism. It can't be. Why? Because we are a part of the human family who has contributed to the discourse on what it means to be human. So we invite that conversation with everybody who claims to have some form of humanism in their background, but you must remember you have a history of Christian humanism in your background too.
And now we would have a time of prayer or meditation. The following prayer was written by Reverend Ann Baker. The prayer was written I found it, in a Unitarian Universalist meditation manual, a new one this year, called To Wake, to Rise, edited by the first African American president of the Unitarian Universalist Association, Reverend Bill Sinkford. Each of us has our own way of entering into prayer or meditation or reflection, and I invite you to do so now. You might sit up straight, you might take a deep, slow breath, attend to your breathing, let your eyelids rest. Bring your attention inside. We gather with a hunger for reconciliation. What is done cannot be undone. What is done must not be done. What is done now must be done with care. We gather because we are hopeful, because we have visions and dreams of a brighter future, that there may be more than vision in this room. There are wounds here, wounds we must heal together. Grief and anger for all that's been lost, guilt and fear in the reliving, pain that has gone without sufficient comfort, mistrust that was earned that continues burning still. Every injury we may have named and yet still carry, and those we haven't, can't, or dare not speak aloud. Those we are not ready to make public, those still not recognized, accepted, or understood. These are wounds that seek replacement, not cancellation, not denial. Wounds we will need to tend cautiously, applying the salve of understanding, forming scars that mark our history, without disfiguring the future we might share. This is not the time of quick solutions, fancy talking. This is a time of slow precision. This is a prayer for peace. We are new to this endeavor, new at listening, new at hearing, new at taking enough time to honestly receive one another's stories.
What wondrous love is this, oh my soul, oh my soul. What wondrous love is this, oh my soul. What wondrous love is this, oh my soul, oh my soul. What wondrous love is this, oh my soul. What wondrous love is this that brings my heart such bliss and takes away the pain of my soul, of my soul, and takes away the pain of my soul. When I was sinking down, sinking down, sinking down. When I was sinking down, sinking down. When I was sinking down beneath my sorrow's ground, friends to me gather round, oh my soul, oh my soul. Friends to me gather round, oh my soul. To love and to all friends I will sing, I will sing. To love and to all friends I will sing. To love and to all friends who pain and sorrow mend, with thanks unto the end I will sing, I will sing. With thanks unto the end I will sing. Please show me and speak now, oh my soul, oh my soul. Please show me and speak now, oh my soul. Please show me and speak now. Tell my anger and grief how to let love make me whole. I will sing, oh my soul, to let love make me, let love make, oh soul, I will sing, I will sing.
Be undone. What is done cannot be undone. What is done next must now be done with care. We gather because we are hopeful, because we have visions and dreams of a brighter future. May the strength of this time together help us to move forward. May the wisdom from our experiences help us know our path. May we have courage to return as often as necessary until our way is clear. May we have perseverance together to see it through. May we cause it to be so. Amen. This quote was written by Bill Schultz. He was a Unitarian Universalist minister and a president in 1985 of our Unitarian Universalist Association. Come into this place of peace and let its spirit heal your soul. Come into this place of memory and let its history warm your soul. Come into this place of prophecy and power and let its vision change your heart. I first joined Unitarian Universalism in Fort Worth, Texas at First Jefferson Unitarian Universalist Church in 1979. By that time, Bill was president. I was deeply involved in the church, teaching classes, building your own theology, newcomers classes, junior high and high school classes, all of them involving a fair amount of Unitarian Universalist history. In the 80s and 90s, I loved this quote. It offered me comfort. As I reflect on it now, there are parts of it I understand in new ways. But I get ahead of myself. My story actually begins this spring of 2017. I was preparing to go to General Assembly, our yearly denominational meeting, and we were holding it in New Orleans. And white supremacy, oppression was spreading throughout our country. So many things happening in this post-Obama phase. I felt like I could see what was happening and understand some of it. And I would continue to work against a lot of these horrible things that were happening and still happening in our country. But it wasn't just in our country. I was surprised, to say the least, that the accusation of white supremacy occurred within our denomination. And then came the resignation of our Unitarian Universalist president and other national leadership staff over controversial hiring practices, the hiring of mostly white male ministers for leadership positions in many levels. This was quickly followed by the arrest of one of our Unitarian Universalist clergy, a man who had successfully run a church that was missionally based, helping the poor and marginalized in a small town in Oklahoma. This person, this clergy, this friend of mine had been a mentor to me as I started to move into my seminary, my becoming a minister. And he was arrested for having child porn on his computer. And if that wasn't enough, when I arrived at ministry days, the professional days for ministers before coming to General Assembly a few days later, I was talking with some friends, and they shared with me another issue. There's a lecture during ministry days. It's called the Berry Street Lecture. It's one of our most important lectures. It's given by one of our top ministers, someone highly esteemed, highly respected, a professional in our denomination. And he or she is invited to speak before the assembly of ministers on issues facing Unitarian Universalist ministers. I was astonished to learn that one of the past Berry Street lecture presenters, a woman, had had her lecture, which was published on the Unitarian Universalist Ministers Association website, redacted by a male minister. He had brought a lawsuit against the UU Ministers Association to have his name removed, redacted, from the Berry Street lecture because the lecture pointed out his sexual indiscretions as a UU minister. She had been talking about how we need to be vigilant in dealing with sexual transgressions within our ministry. And then, if that weren't enough, at General Assembly, I, along with the rest of the denomination, learned of the shockingly large severance packages that were given to the president and leadership staff of the UUA who resigned. They quit, and yet they were given these severance packages, hundreds of thousands of dollars that could have supported any number of worthy causes that we as a denomination hold dear. It would be easy to say that I was a little down on Unitarian Universalism at the time. At ministry days, I knew we would have to spend some time talking about all of this. Our painful feelings, the hard knocks that Unitarian Universalism has been taking. I did not really look forward to spending days rehashing feelings about all these problems and feelings and issues in the state of Unitarian Universalism. In fact, I really dreaded going. But you know what? After some deeply moving discussions by my colleagues about the issues, colleagues who were on the front line of many of these issues, what I took away from ministry days and going into General Assembly was a sense of renewed hope for our faith, that we could get through this. And as I walked into General Assembly, we made that transition from ministry days to General Assembly, first thing that I noticed, there were more people of color than I had ever seen. The Black Lives Unitarian Universalists were everywhere, providing guidance to all of us at General Assembly, educating us on what Unitarian Universalism will need to become if we are truly to take the opportunity to re-knit our brokenness as a denomination. Brokenness that has its roots in the General Assembly of 1969, almost 50 years ago. Re-knit our denomination to authentically embrace and support people of color in our churches and in our denomination. And not just recognize them, not just support them, but lift them up into power and leadership at every level across our churches and denomination. You heard Dr. Sanyika preach on the video this morning. Unitarian Universalism at its best is an instrument to transform humanity so that humanity can transform to its highest level. And so, as he says, so do I believe. But in order for that to happen, we must not be a static faith. We have to be a faith that is always under construction, both within our own hearts and minds and within our denomination. If we ever think we are perfect or a sophisticated Unitarian Universalism, we are prone to begin excluding others. Perhaps not intentionally, perhaps even outside of our own awareness that we're doing so. We have to always watch to not let ourselves become stagnant or too full of ourselves, thinking Unitarian Universalism is what everybody needs, or Unitarian Universalism is what everybody who's rational needs, or Unitarian Universalism is the best thing since sliced bread. But when we begin embracing those kind of ideas, it's really easy to take that step into excluding others, marginalizing others, minimizing others. My friends, this is a challenge, and it's also a message of hope. The crowd assembled at our denomination's annual meeting was electrified by this message. It's the same message of hope that so many of you at this church live out in your lives as you do the work of anti-racism, anti-oppression, restorative justice, and being a congregation that tries to radically welcome the gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, gender fluid, and genderqueer community. But we have to keep in mind that we are in process. We do not have everything right. We do not know everything we need to know right now. We will make mistakes. And we make mistakes, we then forgive ourselves and others and begin again in love. And from all of that, we grow. We grow in wisdom. Let me visit this quote again. Come to this place of peace and let its silence heal your spirit. Come into this place of memory and let its history warm your soul. Come into this place of prophecy and power and let its vision change your heart. When I was new to Unitarian Universalism, this quote comforted me. Perhaps pacified me, stagnated me. But now, 40 years later, it challenges me and energizes me. Come into this place of peace. Yes, there are times when we need peace, each and every one of us. And we try to make those times here. Meditations, prayers, rituals, times when we sit with someone and listen. Many times when they are in need and need an ear, and they need peace. But what you can achieve when you work from that place of inner peace, deep inner peace, is also important. There are wounds in the world that we are called to heal. There is understanding that we need to make this work in the world happen. And we will need to tend our wounds and the wounds of the world cautiously. We are renewed to do that hard work of co-creating a world that reflects the peace that we hold inside, so that we can bring that peace from our hearts out into the world. Come into this place of memory and let its history warm your soul. There are so many good things to remember in our history. We ordained the first woman minister in America, Universalist Reverend Olympia Brown. And so many Unitarians. One, Ralph Waldo Emerson, standing before the Harvard Divinity School students who are soon to become ministers. And he told them, do not seek inspiration from the Bible or religious tradition. Instead, seek inspiration if you're going to preach from inside yourself. A radical message. Our denominational history is populated by a long line of women and men who were not just great thinkers. They turned their visions of a brighter future into reality. We do need to remember the good, but not at the expense of forgetting the bad. There are scars that mark our history, and what is done cannot be undone. So I invite you, I encourage you, look at our history, all of our history, and let's work together with slow precision to repair the wounds, not cancel or deny them. Come into this place of prophecy and power, and let its vision change your heart. And what is prophecy? Prophecy is speaking truth to power. And Unitarian Universalists have done that throughout our history. Henry David Thoreau, Theodore Parker writing and preaching about the abolition of slavery. Many of our ministers preaching against wars in Vietnam and Iraq and Afghanistan. Universalist Albert Schweitzer speaking out against nuclear weapons and working to stop their proliferation. But we also need to be careful about power. Power corrupts. Power can lead us to thinking we are a perfect or a sophisticated Unitarian Universalism, stagnant and too full of ourselves, too self-satisfied, too self-congratulatory to ever realize how we are excluding, marginalizing, or minimizing others. We have a vision of a world with peace, equity, justice, compassion, respect. This vision and the work we need to do to bring this vision into reality rekindles my heart and renews my hope. Yes, I will continue to speak truth to power. It is more critical now than ever in our history, in the history of this country. I will name injustice to people in political power, and I will continue to work for justice, for the poor, for this planet, for people of color, for all marginalized groups, all oppressed. And I hope you will do the same. As I mentioned earlier, there's also the work in the world that we need to do. It comes from the inside out into the world. So I want to share with you a little bit that we are doing here to bring out into the world that prophecy. We're creating a program here we call SMILE. It's a social justice project still in its development here at this church. And it rekindles my heart and renews my hope. We're creating a program of summer internship and mentoring for underprivileged and discriminated youth so that they have a chance at success in this world. And this is a direct result of the multicultural outreach that we've been engaging in with PT Man, the Proviso Township Ministerial Alliance Network, a group of evangelical African American churches We've been doing this for a couple of years now. And it's made a difference in us and in what we can do in the world. And I see all of the individual and group efforts that people in this church are doing to change the world, to make it better. Letter writing, calling, emailing, marching, standing loud and proud in support of Planned Parenthood. All this, too, rekindles my heart and renews my hope. I read at the end of the prayer today the following: "What is done cannot be undone. What is done next must be done with care. We gather because we are hopeful, because we have visions and dreams of a brighter future. May the strength of this time together help us to move forward. May the wisdom of our experiences help us to know our path. May we have courage to return as often as necessary until the way is clear. May we have perseverance together to see it through. May we cause it to be so." We, all of us, have dreams and visions for a brighter future, and we must work together for that future with persistence, with courage, but also with caution. If we are mindful, we will develop wisdom along the way, and we will redefine and reimagine what it is to be Unitarian Universalists and to have a Unitarian Universalist association that reflects who we are. We will have to adapt and become responsive and effective to be effective in these difficult times. We cannot be static, either individually or as a denomination. We must always be under construction. It's time for us to add a few new rooms to our house of prophecy. So let's pick up our tools and build a new way forward together. Amen, amen, and amen.
Let there be an offering to sustain and strengthen this place which is sacred to so many of us, a community of memory and hope, for we are now the keepers of the dream. The offering for the work of this church will now be given and received.
So as I was working on this service, I came across the reading in this book called Roller Skating as a Spiritual Discipline by Unitarian Universalist minister Reverend Christopher Buse. He says, I have a theme song for roller skating. It's from the pop group Chumbawamba. The words of the chorus are, I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never going to keep me down. Yes, you are going to sing this later. If you've seen me skate, you can appreciate why this song is so appropriate. When I put on my roller skates, I sometimes feel vulnerable. I become more aware I might fall and hurt myself. If I give in to that fear, I will never be able to experience the fun of flying around the skating rink. Of course, the vulnerability I feel on roller skates is only a heightened sense of the vulnerability I feel in everyday life. Roller skating is not the only activity during which I get knocked down. I've been knocked down on many occasions by the death of friends and family, by disappointed hopes, broken promises, shattered dreams. I think very few of us make it around the roller rink of life completely unscathed. Many of us have learned a lesson or two from the theology of hard knocks. One of the most significant decisions anyone can ever make is how to respond when hurt or injured by life. When I'm roller skating, I realize that I have at least 3 choices. That is, when I fall down. One temptation is simply to remain sprawled out on the roller rink floor, wallowing in my misery and hoping someone will take pity. Another is to crawl off the floor, sit on the bench, and watch the rest of the session go by. Or I can get up again and say, you're never going to keep me down. In my life, it's been important to make the decision to get up once more, to brush myself off and try one more time to make it around the rink. This is not always easy. And on more than one occasion, I've needed a helping hand to get me back up on my feet again. Yet I know I do not want to be a permanent spectator on the sidelines of existence. In the fullness of time, I want to be back in the flow of things, to re-enter and move with the rhythm and circle of life once more. I say thank you, Reverend Buse. I can certainly relate. And so as we extinguish our chalice, let us remember to not let the hard knocks keep us down as individuals or as Unitarian Universalists or as a Unitarian Universalist association. We are under construction, and we shall always be under construction. Our faith is not a static thing, and we will be called on to do the work in the world. And when we do that work, we will at times fall short, and we will fall down, and we will get up again. So I invite you to rise in body or spirit and join me in singing, guess what? Chumbawamba. We're going to sing the chorus a few times. I get knocked down.